Dad, what was your funniest don't tell mom moment? It started when my 6-year-old son, Max, asked if we could build a treehouse. I'd promised him one for months, but between overtime at the construction company and Amy's strict safety concerns, it kept getting delayed. That Saturday, Amy was visiting her sister for the weekend, our perfect chance. Let's do it, buddy, I whispered conspiratorially. But it's our secret project. Don't tell mom until it's finished. Max's eyes widened with excitement. A dad and son secret mission. I'd built entire houses from foundation to roof, so a simple treehouse seemed laughably easy. We drove to the hardware store, where Max proudly pushed a miniature shopping cart, filling it with supplies. The cashier smiled as Max explained we were on a super secret mission. Don't worry, she winked. I won't tell mom. The truth was, Amy had good reason to be cautious about my solo projects with Max. 3 months earlier, I'd attempted to teach him how to ride a bike by building a gentle training slope in the backyard. The slope, constructed from plywood and cinder blocks, collapsed the moment Max pedaled onto it. He escaped with only a scraped elbow, but Amy banned me from unsupervised engineering projects for the foreseeable future. Then there was the kitchen chemistry incident last Christmas, when I showed Max how baking soda and vinegar create a volcanic reaction. We accidentally used Amy's heirloom ceramic mixing bowl, the one her grandmother had passed down, which cracked from the thermal shock. Amy found us frantically trying to superglue it back together, vinegar puddles everywhere and baking soda footprints tracked through the entire house. No more experiments without adult supervision, she decreed. I am an adult, I'd protested. A different adult, she'd clarified. So this treehouse was more than just a fun weekend project. It was my chance at redemption, a way to prove I could create something safe and spectacular for our son without disaster striking. I'd spent weeks secretly sketching designs, calculating load-bearing requirements, and watching DIY treehouse videos online. What I hadn't counted on was Max's helpful design input. It needs to fit at least 20 people, he insisted as we laid out lumber in the yard. Buddy, it's going to be about 8 feet by 8 feet. That would fit maybe 4 adults. Max considered this. What about small people, like my whole class? Still not 20. What if they're very, very skinny? I couldn't argue with 6-year-old logic. By noon, we had the basic platform secured in the massive oak behind our house. Max handed me nails with solemn responsibility, occasionally shouting, "Watch out below," before dropping his toy hammer. We ate peanut butter sandwiches perched on our half-finished creation, dangling our legs 15 feet above the ground. This is the best day ever, Dad, Max declared, peanut butter smeared across his cheek. I had to agree. The spring sunshine filtered through fresh oak leaves, birds chirped nearby, seemingly approving our construction, and Max's face glowed with pure joy as he hammered a nail, the same nail, repeatedly, into what would become the railing. The world felt perfect. Then my phone rang. Amy's face lit up my screen. Don't say anything about the treehouse, I whispered to Max, who nodded seriously, making a lip-zipping motion. Hey, babe, how's your sister? I answered casually. Good. We're having lunch. What are you boys up to? I glanced at our half-built creation, wood shavings covering my clothes, sawdust in my hair. Oh, you know, guy stuff. Watching cartoons. Maybe some dinosaurs later. Max giggled beside me, nearly giving us away. What was that? Amy asked suspiciously. Max is just excited about dinosaur cartoons. Put him on. I want to say hi. My stomach dropped as I handed the phone to Max, whispering, remember, it's a surprise. Max took the phone, his little face serious. Hi, Mommy. We're watching, cartoons. His eyes darted to our half-built treehouse. What? No, we're not building anything. Daddy said it's a surprise. I lunged for the phone, but Max jumped back, accidentally dropping it. I watched in horror as my iPhone tumbled through the wooden slats, hitting every beam on its way down before landing with a sickening crack on a rock below. Oops, Max whispered. I climbed down the ladder to retrieve it. The screen was shattered, but somehow the call was still connected. Hello? Hello? Amy's voice crackled through the broken speaker. Where are you? Why did it sound like you're outside? And what was that crash? Max called down, Dad, can I tell her about the, no? I shouted. That's when I heard the unmistakable creak of wood giving way. Dad, the floor is, I looked up just as the entire platform tilted sideways. Max slid toward the edge, eyes wide with terror. I dropped the phone and lunged forward, arms outstretched. Time slowed as my son fell through the air. I caught him just before he hit the ground, the force knocking us both backward. We landed in a heap, Max clutched against my chest. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then Max lifted his head, his face inches from mine. That was awesome, he shouted. Can we do it again? I started laughing, partly from relief, partly from the absurdity. Max joined in, his giggles mixing with mine until we were both breathless. From the forgotten phone came Amy's panicked voice. What is happening? Is that Max? Why is he screaming? I picked up the shattered phone. Everything's fine. Max just got excited about a dinosaur cartoon. Got to go. Battery dying. I hung up and surveyed the damage. The platform hung at a sickening angle, attached by just 2 bolts. Lumber and tools lay scattered across the yard. My phone was destroyed. And somehow, Amy would be home tomorrow. Dad, Max tugged at my shirt, is our treehouse broken? I looked down at his disappointed face, then back at the wreckage. Not broken, buddy, just under construction. But we need a new plan. That's when my next terrible idea formed. How would you like to call Uncle Jake? Uncle Jake wasn't actually his uncle. He was my best friend since 3rd grade and the most chaotic person I knew. While I'd settled into responsible fatherhood, Jake remained perpetually 21, the guy who once convinced me to race shopping carts through a department store, the guy who got us banned from 3 restaurants in one night, the guy Amy had specifically banned from babysitting after he taught Max how to make kitchen science experiments that left burn marks on our ceiling. But Jake was also a licensed contractor who specialized in rush jobs. The story of how Jake became Uncle Jake is legendary in our family circle. It happened when Max was just 3. Amy and I had tickets to a concert, our first night out since Max was born. Our regular babysitter canceled last minute, and in desperation, I called Jake. You want me to watch Tiny Human? He'd asked, sounding genuinely baffled by the concept. Just for 4 hours. He'll be asleep most of the time. All you have to do is sit on our couch and make sure the house doesn't burn down. In retrospect, I should have been more specific with my instructions. When we returned home, we found Jake and Max sitting on the kitchen floor, surrounded by what appeared to be a miniature city made entirely from household items. Cereal boxes formed skyscrapers, toilet paper tubes became tunnels, aluminum foil shaped into tiny cars. Daddy, Uncle Jake made Robot City. Max had screamed with delight. The kitchen was an absolute disaster, but Max was happier than we'd ever seen him. Jake had spent the entire evening crafting this elaborate world, complete with backstories for each building and a complex society of action figures who lived there. From that moment, Jake was forever Uncle Jake, the magical adult who turned mundane objects into adventures. Amy had grudgingly admitted he was good with Max but drew the line after the ceiling burn incident. Uncle Jake is coming. Max jumped up and down. Can we get ice cream, too, and fireworks? Uncle Jake loves fireworks. No fireworks, I said firmly, already regretting everything. Just Treehouse rescue. I called Jake, who answered on the first ring. Sup, loser. I need emergency construction assistance, I said, lowering my voice so Max couldn't hear. I tried building a treehouse, and it's collapsing with Max. Jake sounded unusually serious. Yeah, he almost fell. I caught him, but my voice wavered as the reality of what could have happened hit me. I'll be there in 20. Don't touch anything else, you hazardous amateur. True to his word, 30 minutes later, Jake's pickup truck roared into our driveway, loaded with additional lumber, power tools, and what appeared to be a small cannon. That's not a real cannon, I said as he unloaded it. Of course not, Jake laughed, winking at Max. It's a t-shirt cannon for celebrating when we finish. Totally safe. Max's eyes were the size of dinner plates. Jake knelt down to Max's level. Hey, buddy, I heard you and your dad are building something awesome. We were, but then it broke, and I fell, and Dad caught me like a superhero. Jake glanced at me. Your dad's pretty good at cleaning up his messes, usually. I pulled Jake aside while Max examined the t-shirt cannon with reverent awe. Look, we have until tomorrow afternoon to fix this disaster. No explosions, no fire, nothing that will get me divorced. Got it? Jake saluted. Captain Buzzkill, I am at your service. Don't worry, by the time Amy gets home, that treehouse will be so perfect she'll forgive the whole building a death trap for your child without consulting her thing. He wasn't wrong about the death trap part. In my haste, I'd ignored basic engineering principles that I normally would have followed religiously on a job site. The platform wasn't properly secured, the weight distribution was all wrong, and I hadn't even checked if the tree could support the structure. Jake surveyed my work and let out a low whistle. Dude, did you build this with your eyes closed? Even Max could see these support beams are worthless. Max nodded seriously. I told Daddy they looked wobbly. Thanks, pal, I sighed. Very helpful. Jake drafted a new design on the back of a fast food receipt, surprisingly professional despite being drawn in ketchup. See, your problem was putting all the weight on these 2 branches, he explained, drawing a crude tree. You need to distribute the load across at least 4 points, preferably 6. And these support beams should be triangulated for maximum stability. I peered at his ketchup engineering. Where did you learn structural triangulation? Dating an architecture student has its benefits, he shrugged. Well, it did until I accidentally used her final project as a skateboard ramp. Some things never changed. We salvaged what materials we could and sent Max on special missions that mostly involved fetching water bottles and staying away from power tools. Jake called in reinforcements. A crew of 3 guys who owed him favors showed up with additional supplies and expertise. Carlos was a master carpenter who spoke very little but worked with mesmerizing precision. Darius specialized in electrical work and had brought solar-powered fixtures liberated from a construction site. And Tyler, the youngest, claimed to be a wood artisan, though Jake later admitted he'd met him at a bar last week. Are you sure these guys know what they're doing? I whispered as they unloaded equipment. Trust me, Jake said. Carlos built half the custom cabinets in the luxury condos downtown. Darius can wire anything, and Tyler's enthusiastic, and he works for beer. By sunset, we had the frame of a genuinely sturdy treehouse taking shape. The crew worked with the efficiency of a military operation, communicating in shorthand and inside jokes. Max watched in fascination as Carlos crafted a perfect ladder from scratch, each rung precisely spaced for small feet. Your dad tried to build this from a YouTube tutorial, didn't he? Carlos asked Max, carefully sanding the edges of each step. Max nodded solemnly. He said bad words when the drill battery died. Carlos laughed. That sounds about right. As darkness fell, we strung up work lights. Max eventually fell asleep on a lawn chair, clutching the hammer I'd given him to supervise with. I covered him with my jacket and continued working alongside Jake's crew. You know Amy's going to kill you anyway, Jake said as we took a water break. Even if we build the world's safest treehouse. Probably, I admitted. But at least Max won't be disappointed. Jake studied me for a moment. You really love that kid more than anything. Then let's make this treehouse legendary. Jake's idea of legendary apparently involved ambitious features I'd never considered. What had started as a simple platform evolved into an architectural wonder. Carlos crafted built-in benches with hidden storage underneath. Darius installed subtle LED lighting along the railings, powered by a small solar panel. Tyler, despite his questionable credentials, had an artistic eye and added decorative elements that transformed the utilitarian structure into something magical. What's this going to be? I asked, watching Tyler carve intricate patterns into a piece of cedar. A dragon, he replied. Every castle needs a guardian. Castle? This was supposed to be a basic treehouse. Tyler looked genuinely confused. But the kid said he wanted a castle treehouse with a tower for his dragon. I glanced at Max, asleep on the lawn chair, and realized he must have been sharing his treehouse dreams with the crew while I wasn't listening. That explained the conical structure Jake and Darius were assembling. Is that a tower? Princess Tower, Jake corrected. Or Dragon Tower, whatever. Amy is going to lose her mind, I muttered. In a good way, Jake insisted. Women love towers. Trust me on this. I had significant doubts about Jake's expertise on what women loved, given his dating history, but it was too late to change course now. We worked through the night. The basic treehouse had evolved into a miniature castle, complete with a lookout tower, a rope bridge, and a secret trapdoor. Every inch was sanded smooth, every nail countersunk and covered. Safety features were implemented everywhere, full railings, secured ladders, non-slip surfaces. The Princess Tower is maybe too much, I said, eyeing the purple-painted spire that now adorned one corner. Max said he wanted a place for his stuffed dragon, Jake shrugged. Dragons need towers. I couldn't argue with that logic. Listen, Jake said, his voice unusually serious, I know Amy's probably going to be pissed about us doing this without her permission, but every kid deserves a special place like this. My dad built me a treehouse when I was 8, and it changed my life. This was news to me. In 20 years of friendship, Jake had rarely mentioned his father, who'd left when he was young. Your dad built you a treehouse? You never told me that. Jake shrugged. It was the last thing he did before he split. Probably guilt-motivated, but still. That treehouse was my sanctuary for years. It's where I designed my first ramp, drew up plans for that potato cannon that got us detained by campus security. He smiled at the memory. Anyway, I just want Max to have something like that, a place where he can be a kid, you know. I nodded, seeing my chaotic friend in a new light. Thanks, Jake, for everything. He punched my shoulder awkwardly. Don't get sentimental on me. We still have to install the zipline. The what? Kidding. Mostly. By dawn, we were putting on the finishing touches, a fold-down desk for homework, Carlos insisted, a built-in bookshelf, and solar-powered fairy lights that made the whole structure glow. When Max woke up and saw it, he screamed so loudly that Mrs. Kapoor next door came out to make sure no one was being murdered. This is the best treehouse in the universe. Max shouted, running from feature to feature. Mom is going to love it. I exchanged glances with Jake. That remained to be seen. The crew packed up their tools, each accepting my profuse thanks and refusing payment. Friends of Jake don't pay, Carlos said, though he did accept the breakfast burritos I ordered for everyone. As they prepared to leave, Jake pulled out the t-shirt cannon. Absolutely not, I said. Come on, we have to celebrate with a cannon. It only shoots t-shirts and maybe small stuffed animals and occasionally confetti, but I removed that feature after the wedding incident. I didn't want to know about the wedding incident, but Max was already jumping up and down. Please, Dad. Uncle Jake said I could push the button. I relented. One shot, aimed at the open field. Nothing but a t-shirt. Jake positioned the cannon while I checked my watch. It was 11 o'clock in the morning. Amy wouldn't be home until 4 o'clock in the afternoon, plenty of time for any cannon-related cleanup. Ready, Max? Jake handed him a remote with a comically large red button. Max pressed it with both thumbs. The sound was much louder than I expected, less pop and more explosion. The t-shirt rocketed out with shocking velocity, sailed over our intended landing zone, and continued its journey directly through Mrs. Kapoor's living room window. The shattering glass seemed to echo for an eternity. Mrs. Kapoor's relationship with our family was already complicated. She was a retired literature professor who valued her tranquility and had strong opinions on proper child-rearing. When we'd moved in 3 years ago, she presented us with a handwritten list of neighborhood expectations, which included specific quiet hours and guidelines for acceptable lawn ornaments. Our first Christmas, we'd installed inflatable decorations, a jolly Santa, a snowman, and a reindeer on our front lawn. Mrs. Kapoor had left a note in our mailbox suggesting that ostentatious displays lowered property values and included a printout of tasteful holiday decoration alternatives. The following Easter, Max had accidentally released 24 plastic eggs into her precisely manicured garden during an egg hunt. She'd returned them in alphabetized bags with a note about respect for boundaries. Just last month, she'd complained to the HOA about our basketball hoop, claiming it created excessive noise pollution and encouraged neighborhood hooliganism. And now we'd shot a t-shirt through her window. "That's my cue to leave," Jake said, hastily loading the cannon back into his truck. His crew followed suit, peeling out of my driveway like they were fleeing a crime scene, which technically they were. Max looked up at me, eyes wide. "Are we in trouble?" Before I could answer, Mrs. Kapoor emerged from her house, holding the smoking t-shirt. It was one of Jake's band shirts, emblazoned with the slogan "Blow Your Mind." Ironic. "Michael Henderson," she screeched. "What in God's name are you doing?" I pushed Max gently toward the house. "Go inside, buddy." "But what about Mrs. Kapoor's window?" "Dad will handle it," I promised, wondering how exactly I'd do that. I approached Mrs. Kapoor's property line, hands raised in surrender. "Mrs. Kapoor, I am so sorry. It was an accident, and I'll pay for all repairs." She clutched the t-shirt like evidence at a murder trial. "Do you have any idea what could have happened?" I was sitting in that very room. If I hadn't gone to the kitchen for tea, I could have been seriously injured. The guilt hit me like a truck. She was right, this wasn't just property damage, someone could have been hurt. I understand. It was incredibly irresponsible, and there's no excuse. I'll call a glass repair company immediately, and of course, I'll cover any additional damages to your furniture or belongings. Mrs. Kapoor seemed surprised by my immediate acceptance of responsibility. She'd clearly prepared for an argument. "Well," she sniffed, "I should hope so." And what exactly was that cannon doing in a residential neighborhood? I briefly considered lying but decided against it. "It's a t-shirt cannon. We were celebrating the completion of Max's treehouse." Her eyes narrowed. "Treehouse? You didn't submit plans to the HOA for a backyard structure." Oh God, the HOA. In my haste to create the perfect surprise for Max, I'd completely forgotten about the Homeowners Association's strict rules regarding permanent structures. "It's not a permanent structure," I lied. "It's more of a temporary play area. Very temporary. Practically ephemeral." Mrs. Kapoor was not convinced. "I'm on the Architectural Review Committee, Mr. Henderson. I know a permanent structure when I see one, and I can see the top of that purple monstrosity from here." She gestured toward the Princess Tower, which did indeed rise above our shared fence line. I was in deep trouble. "Mrs. Kapoor, I promise I'll file the proper paperwork retroactively, and I'll get your window fixed today, right now, in fact." She studied me for a moment, then sighed dramatically. "I suppose accidents do happen, even with irresponsible parents. My grandson is about your son's age, you know. His father would never engage in such reckless activities." I nodded, willing to accept any criticism if it meant avoiding an official HOA complaint. "Your grandson sounds fortunate to have such a responsible father," I said diplomatically. Mrs. Kapoor's expression softened slightly. "Nathan is very safety conscious, perhaps excessively so. Mason isn't allowed to climb trees or ride a bicycle without full body padding." Was that a hint of disapproval in her voice? "Mason is your grandson?" I asked. She nodded. "He's visiting next weekend. His parents are attending a conference on optimal childhood nutrition." She glanced over my shoulder toward our yard, where the treehouse castle was partially visible. "Does your structure have safety features, railings, and such?" "Absolutely," I said. "Triple-checked by a professional contractor. Every edge is rounded, every surface sanded. It's basically a padded fortress up there." Mrs. Kapoor seemed to be considering something. "Mason isn't permitted to climb trees at home. Nathan says it's statistically dangerous." I took a chance. "Max would love to have a playdate sometime. The treehouse is extremely safe, and I'd be supervising the entire time." Mrs. Kapoor sniffed. "We'll see. First, you'll need to repair my window and submit proper HOA documentation." "Of course. I'll call the glass company right now." After arranging for an emergency glass replacement at triple the normal rate, I returned to the house to find Max building a fort out of couch cushions. "Is Mrs. Kapoor going to call the police?" he asked seriously. "No, buddy, but we might need to mow her lawn for the rest of the summer." Max considered this. "That seems fair. Her window made a really cool sound when it broke." Let's not mention that part to Mom. Max's eyes widened. Mom. She's coming home today. Can we show her the treehouse now? I checked the time, 12:30 in the afternoon. Still hours before Amy's return. Let's clean up first and maybe take showers. We smell like construction workers. But we are construction workers. Max pumped his little fist. Treehouse construction workers. I couldn't argue with that logic either. After showers and a quick cleanup of the living room, we headed back outside to prepare the treehouse for its grand unveiling. I had to admit, it looked incredible. The tree's sturdy branches cradled the structure perfectly, and from certain angles, it looked like a natural extension of the oak itself. Max insisted on adding his own touches, hanging his artwork along the interior walls and positioning his stuffed animals as guards at the entrance. I strung a ribbon across the rope ladder for Amy to cut, and Max made a sign that read, "Welcome to Max and Dad's awesome fort," in wobbly letters. Our previous Don't Tell Mom incidents flashed through my mind: the broken mixing bowl, the failed bike ramp, the time Max and I tried to give our golden retriever, Buddy, a summer haircut that left him looking like a patchy, embarrassed mop, the Mother's Day breakfast that triggered the smoke detectors and ruined Amy's favorite pan. This had to go differently. This had to be perfect. By 3:30 in the afternoon, everything was ready. I even had time to run to the florist and pick up a bouquet of Amy's favorite lilies as a peace offering. Mom's going to be so surprised, Max said for the 100th time, vibrating with excitement as we waited in the front yard. Remember, let me talk first, I cautioned. Mom might be a little shocked. Max nodded solemnly. Because we did it without asking. Exactly. But it's so awesome, she can't be mad, right? I ruffled his hair. Let's hope so, buddy. At 3:55 in the afternoon, Amy's car turned into our street. Max jumped up and down, waving frantically. I straightened my shirt and held the flowers like a shield. Amy's car slowed as she approached our driveway. Through the windshield, I could see her expression shift from relaxed to suspicious as she noted Max's obvious excitement and my too casual stance. After 7 years of marriage, Amy could read me like a book. My everything is normal face apparently looked exactly like my I've done something questionable face. She pulled into the driveway, looking refreshed from her weekend away but already bracing for whatever awaited her. She stepped out of the car, smiling as Max barreled into her for a hug. There's my favorite guy. Did you and Dad have a good weekend? The best weekend ever. Max shouted. We built you a, we have a surprise, I interrupted quickly, handing her the flowers. But first, how was your sister? Amy looked between us suspiciously. Fine. What's going on? And why do you look so nervous? Nervous? Me? My voice cracked embarrassingly. Just missed you, that's all. Max was practically exploding with impatience. Can we show her now? Please? Show me what? Amy asked, accepting the flowers with narrowed eyes. Follow us, I said, taking her free hand. And maybe keep an open mind. We led her through the house and out the back door. I had intentionally positioned her so the oak tree would block the view until the last moment. Okay, close your eyes, I instructed. Michael, please, it's a good surprise. I promise. She sighed but closed her eyes, allowing me to guide her forward a few more steps. Ready? I asked, positioning her perfectly. Open them. Amy opened her eyes, blinked, and then her jaw dropped. The treehouse stood before us in all its glory, sunlight glinting off the windows. Yes, Jake had installed actual windows, the purple tower catching the afternoon light, solar fairy lights twinkling around the railing, and Max's sign fluttering in the breeze. For a long moment, Amy said nothing, just stared. Do you like it, Mommy? Max asked, his voice suddenly small. Me and Daddy built it for me, well, and for you, too, and Daddy's friends helped. Amy turned to me, her expression unreadable. You built a treehouse? Without asking me? With our 6-year-old son? I swallowed. Yes. Then, to my eternal surprise, she started laughing, not the angry laugh I'd feared, but genuine, joyful laughter. It's amazing, she exclaimed, kneeling down to hug Max. Is that a princess tower? It's for Dragon, Max explained. Uncle Jake said he needed a special place. Amy's smile tightened slightly. Uncle Jake was here. He brought his friends and a cannon. It only shoots t-shirts, I said quickly. And it's gone now. Very gone. Uh-huh. She didn't look convinced. And did this t-shirt cannon have anything to do with Mrs. Kapoor's broken window? She texted me about an incident but wouldn't elaborate. Max gasped. How did you know about that? I closed my eyes briefly. Max, buddy, remember our talk about secret missions? But she already knows. Amy crossed her arms, her expression suddenly dangerous. What else should I know, Michael? Before I could formulate a response, Max tugged on Amy's shirt. Mom, you haven't seen inside yet. There's a trapdoor and a secret password, and Dad says I can sleep there when I'm older, but not yet because of raccoons. Amy allowed herself to be pulled toward the treehouse, throwing me a look that clearly said our conversation wasn't over. I followed behind, mentally calculating how many weekends of solo parenting it would take to make up for this. Max proudly demonstrated every feature of the treehouse, from the folding desk for homework to the built-in bookshelf for his dinosaur books to the trapdoor that led to a small lower platform for spy missions. Amy oohed and awed appropriately, examining each safety feature with a critical eye that gradually softened as she realized how secure everything was. Dad fell through the first floor, Max informed her cheerfully. But Uncle Jake said that was because Dad builds like a drunk panda. Amy raised an eyebrow at me. The first attempt had some structural issues, I admitted. But everything's perfect now. Jake's crew actually does commercial construction. They know what they're doing, unlike some people, she said, but there was a smile playing at her lips. After the grand tour, Max ran ahead to the house, declaring he needed to find Dragon to show him his new tower. Amy and I stood alone on the treehouse platform, looking out over our yard. You realize he's never going to want to sleep in his actual bedroom again, she said. I regretted it about halfway through construction, I admitted. But you should have seen his face. She leaned against the railing, studying me. So, t-shirt cannon? In my defense, I said no multiple times. And yet, Mrs. Kapoor's window will be replaced tomorrow at my expense. And your phone? She gestured to the ancient backup phone I was using. Casualty of construction, also being replaced tomorrow. Amy shook her head, but she was smiling. You know, when my sister asked what you two would get up to while I was gone, I joked, probably something involving power tools or fire. I didn't actually expect to be right. No fire, I pointed out. That's a win. She laughed and leaned her head on my shoulder. It really is incredible, dangerous and impulsive and exactly the kind of project I would have vetoed immediately, but incredible. So, you're not mad? Oh, I'm definitely mad, but also impressed. She glanced at me sideways. You're taking Max to his dentist appointment next week and the one after that and possibly all appointments for the rest of his childhood. Fair. And you're explaining to Mrs. Kapoor why there's a t-shirt with blow your mind stuck in her rose bushes. Already handled. And no more Uncle Jake for at least a month. I winced. He's coming for dinner Thursday. Amy sighed deeply. Of course he is. We stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching as Max raced back across the yard, Dragon clutched in his arms. You know, Amy said quietly, my dad never built me anything. Not once. I looked at her, surprised. She rarely talked about her father, who'd left when she was young. Max is lucky to have you, she continued. Even when you make questionable construction decisions. I slipped my arm around her waist. Next time, we'll consult the family architect first. Next time? She raised an eyebrow. There will not be a next time for secret construction projects. Of course not, I agreed solemnly. Absolutely no more secrets. Just then, Max came thundering up the ladder, Dragon in tow. Dad, I found your phone in the washing machine. It made funny noises, and now the washing machine isn't working. He thrust the thoroughly destroyed device at me, then turned to Amy. Don't worry, Mom. Dad can fix it. He says he can fix anything. Amy's eyes narrowed. The washing machine was fine when I left. I looked from my destroyed phone to my hopeful son to my increasingly suspicious wife. So, about that no more secrets policy, it turns out your washing machine doesn't appreciate having a smartphone go through the spin cycle. Who knew? The phone had somehow survived its fall from the treehouse only to meet its final demise in our laundry room. Max, helpful as always, had noticed my dirty jeans and decided they needed washing. My phone, still in the pocket, went along for the ride. The resulting repair bill included a new washing machine motor, a replacement phone, and Mrs. Kapoor's window. Amy started referring to it as the weekend that broke everything, including her trust in leaving me unsupervised with power tools. But surprisingly, the treehouse became the center of our family life. We installed a proper dining table and had weekly treehouse picnics. When Max started first grade, he did his homework at the fold-down desk Carlos had built, claiming it helped him concentrate because it's closer to the birds. The summer after the treehouse construction, Mrs. Kapoor's grandson, Mason, came to visit. True to his grandmother's description, he arrived in what appeared to be a child-sized hazmat suit, knee pads, elbow pads, helmet, the works. Mom says I can only go up if I wear all my safety gear, Mason explained seriously as he stared up at our treehouse. Max, who had practically been living in the treehouse all summer, nodded sympathetically. The first step is the scariest. After that, it's super easy. I watched as Max patiently guided Mason up the ladder, showing him where to place his feet, encouraging him when he hesitated. You're doing great, Max cheered as Mason finally reached the platform. Now you can see everything. Mason removed his helmet, his eyes wide with wonder. I've never been this high up before. Wait till you see the tower. Max led him inside, already chattering about dragons and spy missions. Mrs. Kapoor stood beside me, watching the boys disappear into the treehouse. I was certain that monstrosity would collapse within a week, she admitted. But it appears you built it properly. Coming from Mrs. Kapoor, this was the equivalent of a standing ovation. Professional help, I confessed. After my first attempt nearly injured Max. She nodded approvingly. Sometimes we need assistance. Nathan refuses to accept help with anything. That boy can barely change a light bulb, but he won't call an electrician. I bit back a smile at her obvious disapproval of her safety-obsessed son-in-law. From inside the treehouse came delighted squeals and laughter, sounds I suspected Mason didn't make often. Your grandson is welcome anytime, I offered. Max loves having a treehouse friend. Mrs. Kapoor sniffed, but I could see she was pleased. Perhaps next time we could avoid launching projectiles through my window. Absolutely no cannons, I promised, of any kind. Uncle Jake brought the coolest water balloon launcher. Max's voice carried from the treehouse. It hits the Reynolds house 3 doors down. Mrs. Kapoor and I exchanged a glance. Perhaps I'll reinforce my windows, she said dryly. I made a mental note to have another conversation with Jake about appropriate childhood activities. But the most surprising outcome of the treehouse saga was Amy's reaction. After the initial shock wore off, she became the treehouse's biggest advocate. When the HOA Architectural Committee, including Mrs. Kapoor, came to inspect it after my retroactive permit application, Amy gave them a full tour, highlighting the safety features and educational benefits. The built-in barometer teaches weather prediction, she explained, showing off a gadget Jake's crew had installed. And the star map on the ceiling helps with astronomy lessons. I hadn't even noticed there was a star map on the ceiling. The HOA approved our permit with only minor modifications. We had to paint the Princess Tower a more architecturally harmonious color. Purple was apparently too visually disruptive. Max chose forest green instead, declaring it more dragon camouflage. Anyway, on warm summer evenings, we'd often find Amy in the treehouse, reading a book or simply watching the sunset from the higher vantage point. I understand why Max loves it up here, she told me one evening. It feels like a different world. That was the idea, I said. A special place just for him. And us, she corrected, leaning against me. A family fortress. I couldn't help feeling proud. My impulsive, chaotic plan had somehow transformed into something meaningful, a space that brought us closer together rather than ending in disaster like so many of my previous don't tell mom schemes. Although, to be fair, there were a few more incidents over the years. There was the Great Water Balloon War of 2019, when Jake, naturally, introduced Max to industrial-strength water balloon slingshots. The entire neighborhood ended up involved, with even Mrs. Kapoor reluctantly joining Team Precision with her garden hose set to jet. Then came the backyard archaeology expedition when Max was 8 and obsessed with dinosaurs. What started as innocent digging for fossils somehow evolved into a 6-foot crater that nearly swallowed our fence and required 3 truckloads of soil to fill. The Christmas Lights Spectacular of 2020 involved Jake's electrical expertise, a custom program that synchronized our decorations to music, and a brief power outage affecting 3 blocks. The fire department assured us it wasn't technically our fault but suggested we'd dial it back next year. And who could forget the homemade hot air balloon attempt? Actually, Amy would prefer we all forget that one. The less said about the singed eyebrows and melted patio furniture, the better. But through it all, the treehouse stood strong, our family's private sanctuary, the scene of countless stories, games, and heart-to-heart talks. Years later, when the treehouse had weathered multiple storms and Max had outgrown Dragon but not the treehouse, Amy and I would sit on that same platform on summer evenings, watching the stars come out. Remember when you thought I'd divorce you over this? She'd tease. The possibility crossed my mind, I'd admit. I almost did when I found out about the washing machine, she'd say, and we'd both laugh. When Max turned 13, he asked if he could renovate the treehouse. I expected him to want something more grown-up, less fairy tale castle and more cool teen hangout. Instead, he presented us with careful drawings showing a reading nook for Amy, a mini coffee station for me, and a larger bookshelf for his growing collection. It's still our family place, he explained, just updated. Jake returned with his crew, now a legitimate construction company, and Max worked alongside them, learning proper techniques and safety measures I probably should have taught him from the start. Carlos brought his son, now an apprentice carpenter. Darius updated the solar system to power a small refrigerator, and Tyler, still paid primarily in beer, carved a new sign for the entrance, Henderson Family Outpost. The Princess Tower remained, though now it housed a telescope instead of stuffed animals. The trapdoor became a proper staircase, but the essence of our impulsive, chaotic, wonderful creation remained. Last month, as Max prepared for high school, I found him sitting in the treehouse late at night, looking pensive. Everything okay, buddy? I asked, climbing up to join him. He nodded. Just thinking about when we built this place, how it almost collapsed, how you caught me. I smiled at the memory, one of my finer moments as a dad. You know what I remember most? He turned to me. You didn't get mad when I dropped your phone and almost fell. You just laughed with me afterward. I was touched that this was his takeaway from what I'd always considered one of my more reckless parenting decisions. Well, I was just relieved you were okay. That's the thing, Dad. I always felt safe, even when things went wrong, because I knew you'd catch me. Max had grown so much, no longer the little boy who needed help hammering nails, but a teenager on the verge of his own adventures. Yet, in that moment, I could still see echoes of the 6-year-old who trusted me implicitly, even when I had no idea what I was doing. I'll always catch you, I promised. Though these days, you might be catching me instead. He laughed. Remember when Mrs. Kapoor caught you trying to retrieve a frisbee from her roof, and you fell into her bushes? I maintained those bushes jumped out at me. We sat in companionable silence, listening to the night sounds. Hey, Dad, Max said finally. Thanks for building this with me, even though Mom freaked out. She came around. Yeah, he grinned, after she made you promise never to work with Uncle Jake unsupervised again. A promise I've broken approximately 27 times. I know. The rocket launcher for my science project? Not subtle. I winced. You knew about that, Dad. It had Jake's logo painted on the side. Fair point. The truth about don't tell mom moments isn't that they're about keeping secrets. They're about those special bonds formed when you're in on something together, when you're co-conspirators in small adventures. They're about the shared laughter when things go wrong and the mutual pride when they somehow work out. Amy knows most of our secrets now. She pretends to be exasperated, but I've caught her bragging to her friends about the treehouse, about Max's confidence, about our family's creative approach to problem solving. Because that's the thing about don't tell mom moments, eventually, mom finds out. But sometimes, if you're very lucky, she decides to keep you anyway, even if you did let Uncle Jake bring a t-shirt cannon to a treehouse warming party, even if you did accidentally destroy a washing machine, a phone, and a neighbor's window in a single weekend, even if you did build an architecturally questionable purple tower because your son's stuffed dragon needed a proper home. As we climbed down from the treehouse that night, Max turned to me with a mischievous grin. So, about that zipline idea Uncle Jake mentioned, don't even think about it, I said firmly. But of course, we both were already thinking about it. Don't tell mom.